Good to see you, everyone. My name is Robbie Howell, and welcome to the first stream of 2025. Hopefully, maybe more. How are you guys all doing today? I hope you're doing well. We're going to wait a couple of minutes for other people to come into chat. And in the meantime, to give you a brief rundown of what we will be doing today, we're going to be announcing the contest winners. We're going to be doing financial transparency for the channel. And we're going to be doing a bit of a Q&A. So get your questions ready if you have any. And I hope you have fun. We're not going to do a super long one today, most likely. But hopefully it shall be entertaining. So while we're taking time for people to come into the stream and join us, you guys let me know if you have any initial questions. How's the first couple days of 2025 going for you all? And yeah, I guess for you newcomers, I can say one thing at the very least, which is, as I believe I indicated recently, I have pretty much every video that I want to do this year planned and scheduled. That's not to say that they're done. God, no, there's so much to do. But I have a full 52 weeks of content hopefully planned for you guys. Not to say I will not miss any, but we'll see. I haven't missed one since last February, so we will see how it goes. Yeah, how are you guys doing? How is 2025 kicking for you so far? We'll give people a time to bop in, and I guess I'll make another post on the Discord live. There we go. Okay. In terms of the contest, which we'll be starting with, obviously the results are public. You can go take a look at them now if you want, but I'm going to be showing them off. It was actually quite competitive, but then we saw two distinct winners streak ahead into the lead. Initially, I would say that for the first couple days, it was pretty neck and neck, and then the winner became decided. Now, let me see. I got a couple people coming in. Hi, Diego, Guire, Duke Rando. Good to see you guys. Olis says, time to see who's truly masters of the siege. The real masters of the siege were the friends we made along the way, eh? And then Megas, Salwete to you as well. All videos scheduled. Yeah, I like to project out my plans like pretty far into the future, as far as I can, both because I have so many ideas I want to like write down and note, but also because I find it a lot easier to muster up the motivation to do things if I know what I'm supposed to be doing in advance. Funnily enough, I technically have my YouTube plans projected out till 2027, but a lot of those change very often, right? So I have an idea of what I want to do. I have years of content planned for you guys. And we'll just see how much of it I can make it through to. How else you guys doing? We'll wait another 3 minutes or so and then jump in. Hey there, Yavik. How you doing, my friend? And let's see, what else will be going on? Oh, I hope you enjoyed the Ninurta expansion, for those of you who enjoy Age of Mythology. Video did not do at all as well as the Sumeria one, and that's kind of to be expected. It's kind of presumptuous creating a DLC for your own Age of Mythology civilization, but I just had so much more to talk about with Sumeria that I felt like I had to. And if you guys enjoy the fourth god pack style thing for Age of Mythology builds, I will continue to do so. Mega says, I guess it's different content, can't plan ahead the games that I will cast weeks in advance. Yeah, there you go, right? It's just a completely different beast, right? Whereas my stuff is mostly just grinding assets and Google Slides. Definitely a different style of content. Let me see. All right, I think we'll wait another minute or two and we'll dive in. As a reminder, let me pull up what I bloody said so I can actually relay it properly, what exactly is at stake here. To the victor of the contest, we will have the following provisions. To the victors. A short video on the channel going over both designs in full detail. So that's one. And I will also be making graphics for you guys. I'll be making unit icons, ensigns, portraits, based on the winner's direct prescriptions. just like I have in my own videos. And then those assets I'll be giving to the winners to use as however they wish. Though for the Age of Mythology one, since Age of Mythology factions have a bajillion assets, I'm only going to be doing the assets for like the core build, right? Okay. Strix says your Sumerian design haunts me. I want to play. Thank you so much. I think it'd actually be really fun. Gabe says Ninurta expansion is really good and interesting. Having 2 new minor gods for each age is a good idea. Could advise the Retold developers. Thank you. I appreciate you saying so very much. We have very different design philosophies, me and the official game, which hopefully means that I can give them ideas that they might like, and they can get rid of all the ones that just don't work. Hey Douglas, how you doing, my friend? All right, I think we have waited long enough. I say we do finalist reveals. And as a reminder, like I just said, to the victor, there will be a short video that goes over both designs in detail. Not going to be like a huge full-length video, but enough to showcase the build in more totality than I did in my initial review on stream. And 2, I'm going to be making assets, art assets, just like I have in my own videos for those builds to the specifications of the winners. So, ready to dive in? For Age of Empires 2, we had the following. We had the Aragon civilization done by Diego. We had the Genoese, which was done by Matroid. And we had the Wari, which was done by Chumbeke. And on the poll, we have a substantial win for Aragon. 47% victory. Though early on, they were quite neck and neck with the Wari. Well done to everyone. And look, this is actually a pretty balanced poll. We have 47% for Aragon, 23% for the Genoese, and 30% for the Wari. And we had some pretty strong advocates for all of the builds. Huge congratulations, not only to everyone who submitted builds to the contest in the first place, but to these 3 fellas for their fantastic designs. These were really, really well made, and I loved every build that I got, but these 3 definitely were the ones that felt like they fit the contest the best. And among those, Aragon feels like a very deserving winner. Diego, congratulations! Thank you so much for being such a great member of this community for so long, and I look forward to doing an in-depth video on your build. In chat, what do you guys think of the Aragon build? Any other insights from now? And I'll quickly check in with chat before we go on to Age of Mythology. Yavik says, in future I will talk about the Slavs. What about the Chuvash? Yes, I absolutely want to talk about the Chuvash people, though there's so much like uncertainty in that area that I'm going to really have to be careful with my sources. So it's one of those builds that I probably am going to need like multiple cultural consultants on, but definitely want to at some point. And Strix says, if we can have units with shields standing the units behind them right now, Total War should just... Nice. Shielding the units behind them right now. Yeah, I actually would really like that. I think it would be quite cool and would fit for quite a few different units. And there's Diego in chat. Nicely done, my friend. All right, and then for our Age of Mythology finalist, our finalists, rather, we have the following. We had the Quiche by Guayer, which I believe Guayer said in Discord was the first build he'd ever done. We have the Samoans by Douglas Chong. And then we had the Romans by Gaius Iulius Megas. And who among these 3 won? Well, it was the Romans. And it was not close. It was close initially. The Samoans were putting up a good fight, but the Romans won the day handily with 56% of the vote. The Quiche got 12%, pretty respectable showing for a first ever build, and the Samoans got 32%, also putting up a valiant fight. I should note, by the way, we got 107 votes for the Age of Mythology portion of the contest, and 102 votes for the Age of Empires 2, and that's what I call a statistically significant sample size. So, fantastically done, Megas. Rome prevails once again, and I look forward to making assets for you. Again, huge thanks to everyone who submitted builds to the contest on the Age of Mythology side. I liked all of them. And to Guayer and Douglas, your work was fantastic. I really liked seeing it, and both the Samoans and the Quiche and many others besides are ones I hope to tackle myself going forwards. So Megas, you will be hearing from me, and we'll be starting to go over the design from here. Now, jumping back over briefly to chat, Diego says, thanks for to votes, buddies. Strick says, will you be doing an Aztec build? Absolutely, I will. Which game, though, is the question. Age of Mythology, the answer is yes. Age of Empires 2, the answer is yes. Megas says, Aragon was definitely not what came to mind when thinking about Siege, but done very well. Yavik says, my grandmother is half Chuvash. Very cool. And Guayer says, yeah, the Quiche were my first. Yeah, really nicely done. And then Megas, Roma Eterna Victrix. Nicely done. Ola says, I'd like to maybe have a go at revamping the Byzantines, sometime in something approaching a La Vanilla form. Perhaps put our heads together on that. Absolutely. I think a Byzantines rework is actually desperately needed. The civilization, I just don't like at all. Right? I know it's a classic. I don't give a I'm iconoclastic in that way, unsurprisingly. Again, congratulations to our 2 contest winners, Diego and Megas. Awesome stuff. You guys will be seeing their builds on the channel in a more full showcase going forwards. But from here, it is time to move over to some channel analytics. Now, this may sound boring, right? But it's important to me to do it. It is important to me to show you guys entirely what's going on my YouTube channel, and I intend to do so pretty much into perpetuity. If that ever changes, I'll let you know, right? Maybe like, I don't know, some family thing comes up, or my wife is like, well, I don't really feel comfortable, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But for now, it's something I want to do. So if you've ever wanted to know what a YouTuber's analytics look like, here's what they look like. Bam, here's my analytics chart, right? So I've customized it to just go from July 1st to December 31st. July, because the last time I did a financial transparency thing, it was ending June 31st. If you guys have questions for analytics stuff, by the way, put them in chat. And here's what my graph looks like. See this big ass spike? That's the Sumerians build. That thing is shot up, right? But here's what my analytics look like for that 6-month period. We got 124K views, not freaking bad. 70K watch hours, that's awesome. 922 subs, and look at this. This is an interesting one, right? So for me, a YouTuber with about 2,000 subs at this point, making $325 over 6 months is actually exceptionally good. And that's because I have long form content and a great audience who watches a lot, who watches a lot of the videos that I put out in long form. However, you can even see what the breakdown is for what videos brought in what things. So the Sumerians build has netted exactly $43.31, right? And this estimated, right? But it's pretty accurate estimations. And that is going off of 3,000 hours of watch time, which is massive, by the way. Like, that's really big on YouTube. And that video by itself got me 121 subs, which is kind of cool. But beyond that, this hopefully can put more into perspective what YouTuber numbers look like. Because the Sumerians was a video that, for me, is the most successful thing I've ever put out. 17K views, 3K watch hours. It's a freaking almost 2-hour-long video. That's big deal. However, when you look at this is like not bad, right? This is cool. I can put this towards modding. I can put this towards commissioning like music for my videos, right? I can do all sorts of cool stuff with this. But the number of hours I put into the Sumerians build is probably approaching 50. That is not to say that is a bad thing by any means, but hopefully it can give you an idea of what early YouTube looks like, if it's something that you've been interested in doing or something that you've been interested in contextualizing for some of your other favorite creators. You can also see some of the other videos that have done well and what kind of order they are in. Here's a fun one. The What New Cultures for Age of Mythology Retold. That has fewer views than my Sumerians video, fewer watch hours, fewer subs. It gained more money. And guess what? This piece of shit, this took me like all of 10 hours to make. It was like a fifth, I would even say less. It's like maybe even a tenth of the effort I put into the Sumerians build, which I actually think was over 50 hours now that I think about it. And it made more money. And if you ever wonder why like slop is so common on YouTube, this is why. Even in this little like microcosmic look at the platform, you can see it just off here. Some of the other biggest builds or like biggest videos of the year were my Manchurian Legacy video. The first one where I like tricked people into thinking it was a real DLC. I still feel so proud about that. Here's another interesting one. This was me reading off of a screen of like looking at patch notes functionally, right? This took me probably, including editing everything, this took me less than 2 hours to make. Very, very easy video. And yet, it's like, you know, $12 not a lot, right? But $12 for 2 hours, that's like starting to approach minimum wage in America. And that you can again see why like low effort content is more incentivized on average on YouTube. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but it's an interesting thing to note. So yeah, I wanted to be again transparent with my financials on the channel because that's important to me. I think thus far on the channel, because if you include the small bits that aren't included by this, including my first month and things like that, my revenue on YouTube is like about $400 over about a 7-month period. And I intend on revealing financials consistently going forwards, unless you guys say overwhelmingly, stop, it's too boring. But I find it interesting, partially because I'm kind of a finance guy, but partially because I just think it's useful to see what other YouTubers might be going through. So if you guys have questions, let me know right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the topic. I'm going to jump over to Chatterino and see what you guys are talking about. Gabe says, I could suggest doing a Japan Age of Mythology build. Yeah, for sure. I actually think Japan is one of the most likely factions to be added to the game. On my initial what cultures could be added to AOM build, it was just behind the Aztecs at number 1. And Mega says, make Cataphract a regional unit with a special Roman version. I think Cataphracts can go way further than that, too. Duke Rando says, short unit for a few others. China, Saracens, Egypt. Yeah, the Cataphracts go a long way. What defines them as being different from knights and stuff is kind of an interesting topic, but I think you can do a lot with it. And Mega says, yes, the faction that is made to be hated by me. Strick says, same reason why historical books are expensive and always out of print. Yeah, they really are. It's a bummer. Mega says 18% watch time is quite impressive for a long video. Yes, and that's why my channel does relatively well for its size. Like pretty substantially well for its size, is because like you guys watch a lot of the videos, which is great, and for that I am extremely grateful. Strick says, was just watching some Finnish flint nappers. Videos are 10 years old and they disappeared. High quality work. That's such a bummer. Yeah, YouTube works in mysterious ways. It feels so permanent, and yet it is also so temporary in so many ways. So the hope for me on my channel is to eventually be able to use it to make a more lasting impact, preferably with an actually published, couple of published sets of games, other more tangible works similar. Duke Rando says, does YouTube pay the same in every country? No, it does not. They actually adjust their payment based on the country you are in. This may have changed, by the way, but when I looked it up, that was the case. And so I'm going off of the American standard, right, which I would imagine is probably one of the higher ones. But I know that other YouTubers in other countries have gotten consistently shafted by the platform, which is standard for the platform, unfortunately. And Mega says, how much does click rate and watch time jump between longer and shorter videos? Because interestingly, the longer videos and streams have better stats than the short ones on the channel. Yes, on the channel you maintain. That is the exact same for me. An example, my Empire video, let's make sure you can see it. My Empire video is one of the shortest videos I put out. Put a lot of work into this one. It actually got decent views. However, it got a fraction of the revenue, though a much higher click rate, which is an interesting one. And I think most of that comes down to the very low watch time. It was just a very different video than I normally put out, and it was also a lot shorter, and length does matter on YouTube. And as it turns out, most of my videos being like over half an hour is part of the reason that I do relatively well for my size. It's an interesting thing though. Yeah, you see a lot, way back in the day, if you guys were on YouTube pre-2016-ish, I think, they were really incentivizing like quite short form content, like preferably 10 minutes exactly, maybe less, maybe more. And then before that, short form content was even more prioritized, like when the ad program was first rolled out. But again, this is like YouTube deep lore. It's boring, I apologize. All right. Now that I've done my due diligence showing financials, I'm happy to share more if you would like. But at this point, I say we do some basic Q&A. I will lead into it with a brief little spoilie, because I love doing so, of what you guys can expect to see this month. In not full detail, of course. This month, I have 1, 2, 3. I'm working on 4 videos currently. And the videos you can expect to see this month are as follows. 1, an interview with I would call an unsung legend of the game. That talks about some of his really incredible work in the HD days of AoE 2. 2, you can expect to see 2 Civ builds. So there's 3. I'm because I missed one a few months back and I've been trying to catch up. So you should be seeing 2 Civ builds this month. And you should expect to see a full Age of Mythology build. I know it's been a while. They take a long ass time, but that's nearly done. So those are the 4 videos you can expect to see this month. And then next month, though this is like a little more tenuous, the ones I have right now are an architecture video, which I think are really awesome, but like don't tend to be as well liked. So I'm trying to space them out. So an architecture video is one, a DLC proposal, and an Age of Mythology ad split probably, or like a god ad thing, and then another Civ build, probably a Civ remake out of the guess. So that's what you can expect to see over the next 2 months. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to get to all of these. With the really big one being the full Age of Mythology build. That one, I'm guessing, is going to be as long as the Sumerians, if not longer. Because it's me, of course. If you all have any questions whatsoever for me in this first stream of the new year, then please do fire away. I will dive back over to chat. Diaborn says, you made over $300. Hope you can hire a modder to show off your game design ideas. That's the goal. Ideas in the works, projects in the pipeline. I don't want to assume they're going to go as well as I hope they're going to go, so I'm not going to talk much about them. But what I will say is I have been using some of the channel finances to pay a musician who watches the channel to create original music. And so if you remember in the Sumerians video, that was the first video that showed off his work. And there will be more coming besides. He's very, very good at what he does. Max Hardcore says, who won? Aragon won for Age of Empires 2. Created by Diego, and the Romans won for Age of Mythology, created by Megas. And Yavik says, in Russia, monetization disabled, and I can say that's a pity that I don't make any profit from views. However, congratulations. Yeah, it's a bummer. It would be great if people could profit from views, but I think that even if I didn't have a financial incentive, I would still do this because I think it's really fun. And also from like a more pragmatic perspective, as a creative and a game designer specifically, you need to get yourself out there, and YouTube just happens to be a very good way to do it. So I think that YouTube has value far, far exceeding monetary, especially for small and medium channels. Once you get to a certain size, yeah, like the sponsorships are going to pay upwards of 10 times as much, sometimes more, of your actual like YouTube revenue, like ad revenue. And sponsorships are like the big bucks. I find sponsorships to be kind of skeezy. Like, I don't think I would take a sponsorship from the vast majority of products. It would have to be a really unusual case, like a Kickstarter or something for a product that actually looked awesome. And then maybe, maybe, but I don't know. Mega says, I have experienced that more effort rarely makes better impressions. Simple casts that don't need much production usually are more successful than the videos I put much more work in. That's often true. I find that my experience is slightly different because the Sumerians, for example, I put a ton of work into that and I got views for it. Obviously, like the money to effort ratio is not there, but that doesn't really matter for what I'm trying to get out of YouTube. So I think if you're trying to make YouTube into a career, finding a way to make extremely low effort content that is still appealing is obviously what you want to do. And I think that's part of the reason that so many people try to pivot to streaming. Diego says, to the moon! Mega says, not that it matters, I don't make money. Exactly, like it often doesn't matter because we can get different things out of the platform. Yavik says, I'd like the developers to add Tajiks, Chagatais, or Hazaras to the game. Yeah, I think I have mentioned Tajiks. I want to see a lot more Turco-Mongol factions, and I do have plans to talk about them. But the Tajiks, I've only brought them up before now because I did a video on a Persian split, and the Tajiks are an Iranian people. Okay, Diego says, great work on the channel. Thank you very much. Yeah, Tajiks are Persians who come under a Turkish name. Yeah, it's like that part of the world, the Transoxianan area, is one of the most miserably complicated things I've ever tried to put my mind to in history. It's so many different, incredibly important powers and ethnic groups just like running roughshod over this one mountainy spit, right? There's so much going on there. Diaborn says, will you make theory crafting videos for turn-based strategy games like Age of Wonders, my personal favorite, Songs of Conquest? I could definitely be convinced with Age of Wonders. One of the things that I've tried to do with theory crafting is just keep it to games I know really well. And so I know Age of Empires 2, I know Age of Mythology, I know Age of Wonders. I know all those extremely well. And I might try pushing it further to other games that I have a consultant with. But to give you an idea, some of the games that I've considered doing theory... There's some games that I would say you can't really theory craft for very well. An example, Fire Emblem, right? You can... I love Fire Emblem. I've played it a lot. And there are a lot of amazing ROM hacks out there. But Fire Emblem is more like just telling your story as a modder, right? You're not really basing it in anything. There's not research to do with it. So unless I was trying to make like a historical Fire Emblem game, oh fuck, which I have thought about doing before. Imagine a Fire Emblem game that was a direct port of the Iliad. That would be freaking sweet. I was listening to a transcription of the Iliad like a year ago, and I was just like, wow, this would make a freaking great Fire Emblem game. So maybe something like that, maybe. It just has to be something that is based in something beyond just my imagination, because I like using my imagination. I do it quite a lot, but I don't find it to be great viewing compared to like trying to ground a build in something a little more meaningful to other people, if that makes sense. Hence why for my Age of Wonders build, I also tried to ground it in some common tropes of fantasy, and also what the game I felt needed. So, but to give you an idea, some other games I've thought about theory crafting for that I know really well, Darkest Dungeon 1 I've considered, though that game has, there's so many great mods for that game already. Kind of feels like retreading ground at this point, but it's a consideration. Pokemon, I've followed competitive Pokemon for ever. And imagine like theory crafting Pokemon based on like biology. That sounds actually really cool. And let's see, what other games have I considered? I mean, there's been so many, but what others actually are meaningful? I thought about Super Smash Bros. For a while because I was really into Melee for many, many years. But again, that's kind of hard because I'm mostly talking about, wouldn't it be cool if this video game character came in? There's no real like academic pursuit beyond that, I suppose. And I think that's kind of what I'm looking for out of theory crafting, is bringing more of an academic lens to like video game design topics. So pardon the big aside. In summary, maybe. Oh, Warcraft 3, that's another one. But again, that one's, it's fantastical, so I'd have to be going off of like fantasy tropes and classic fantasy literature, maybe biology, that sort of thing. So hopefully that answers your question, Diabord. Max says sponsorship equals raid. Yeah, no, I have no intention of doing that. Like, let me put it this way. If one of my children, like, got hit by a car and I had medical bills to pay, I would tell you guys in advance. I'd say, listen, I feel like I need to do a raid sponsorship or something like that, assuming they would even have me. It would take something absolutely remarkable to make me even countenance such an idea, because I think it's gross. Yeah, this build is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. Oh, God. Strick says, big question. Ever plan to delve into pre-Younger Dryas hypothesis, acoustic levitation, so the more drastic look at Atlantean or pre-dynastic Egypt? I think I might do some more... I've thought about doing stuff in Younger Dryas stuff before, but it would take a really deep dive in the sources, and I think I'd need to work with some serious consultants, because there's so much like junk out there, you know what I mean? What could be cool, bear with me, right, is I've often talked about splitting Age of Empires into many more games to represent more specific time frames. And we often draw like the cutoff of the earliest you could do in Sumeria, right? But what if we had like an Age of Empires 0 that was like Copper Age and earlier stuff? That would be so cool. I mean, admittedly, a lot of it would be speculative and working off of like cutting edge research. But I don't know. I think it would be pretty awesome. The Copper Age is a really interesting topic, and the Copper Age civilization was dramatically more sophisticated than one might imagine. So I could see doing something with that at the very least. Ola says a lot of the sponsorship trying to be kind of crap. Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to mislead you guys. I feel like largely speaking, YouTube sponsorships are creators who need money, leveraging their trust and having it be used to deceive their audiences. And I don't stand by that. As someone who has actually paid YouTubers for sponsorships before when I was running my Kickstarter, hopefully that was a good sponsorship. The YouTubers I worked with said they enjoyed working with me, but it's something to consider how much your integrity means to you as a creator and as a person more broadly. And mine happens to mean a good amount to me as of now, and I hope it stays that way. If it doesn't, shame on me. Let me see. Yeah, a lot of scams. Yeah, presently I'm too small to make money here. Frankly, yeah, I was in that position for a long time. It was literally like the spirit of the law shout out. That was the one thing that changed that, right? T2 says Bihar umbrella for the Gupta to Sur Empire. Oh, God. That's way too long. Yeah, I have thought about doing a Bihari civilization, though. I'm working with my wonderful friend Arjun, who is my go-to guy for all things India, to discuss more on that. Guayer says, what place is the next DLC proposal going to be set in? That's a great question. And the most recent build on the channel will point you in the right direction. Max Hardcore says, Darkest Dungeon sounds like a Van Darkholm game. If you have not played, Darkest Dungeon is a fantastic game. If you like turn-based role-playing games, but it's not a traditional role-playing game. It's actually extremely creative. I'd recommend 1 over 2 by a lot. 2 it's fine. It's mostly just like Slay the Spire clone, which I'm getting really sick of. Too many games are just Slay the Spire now, but it has a couple of great ideas. 1 is just bliss, though. I love Darkest Dungeon 1. It's one of the most creative games of all time. If you play it, I cannot recommend this enough. Commit to playing it on hard difficulties and just getting your ass handed to you. It's really fun. Ola says, big questions. Favorite Pokemon and generation of Pokemon games. Generation 3 is the one that I played the most. But I seriously respect generations 4, 5, and 2. 1, I mean, I grew up with it, collected the cards, it's classic, blah-de-blah, but the designs are garbage, to be honest, like, for the most part. There's a couple of great ones, but I don't like them. And newer Pokemon games, 6 was alright, 7 and 8 have had, and 9 have had cool designs. I think 9 is in a step in the right direction, but for the most part, generations like 2 through 5, especially 3, were my sweet spot. Favorite Pokemon, if I absolutely had to pick, would probably be Hariyama, which is probably not an answer you'll hear anyone else give, but I just love that thing. Hottest Pokemon, Hariyama. Chumbeke says Warcraft 3 theory crafting is mostly just being a WoW nerd. I've actually never played WoW. In fact, I swore to myself I would never play WoW after I saw 2 or 3 of my very good friends in middle school become completely addicted to it, and they just stopped hanging out with me. And I swore a vendetta against that goddamn game. Yeah, and so but I love Warcraft 3. And I think that the Warcraft 3 storyline is just one of the best things Blizzard has ever done. There's definitely room to theory craft it. There's a lot of great like minor factions and stuff you can do, and I did lots of it back in the day. Some of my earliest theory crafting that I ever did was Age of Wonders 1. The earliest stuff I ever put online was Warcraft 3 in forum days for some of the mods. Ola says Pokemon was at its best in Generations 4 and 5. I completely agree. Gen 3 is my favorite, but 4 and 5 I liked a lot. A lot of good stuff there. Though I've only ever played them on emulators. Frankly, I've only ever played... I think Gen 3 I played on console a couple of times, but for the most part, I'm just an emulator guy. Duke Rando says the main problem would be finding civilizations. Not sure what you're referring to there, but if you're referring to like the early Younger Dryas, like Copper Age stuff, yeah, that would be rough, but doable. Gen 3 actually gets 3rd place for me, but it's reasonable. As long as it's not like last place, that's totally fine. What would Israel look like in a Chronicles DLC? I have no idea. Could be an interesting topic. I think that the old Israel kingdoms would be really cool. Strick says we need someone like you to be obsessed with Attack on Titan. Yeah, I'm not an anime guy, nor do I really watch TV very much. But in general, my buddy Lee loves it. And there's been a few that have captured my attention. But yeah, theory crafting for like TV shows or for like existing world building is not really something I've enjoyed doing that much, because I find it to be creatively limiting in kind of an uninteresting way. It only to me really gets interesting when you either synthesize it with another IP. For example, what if we put Lord of the Rings and Age of Empires 2? That sort of thing. Or if the IP in question is extremely grounded in some element of reality, whether that be biology, history, mythology, or even amalgamations of tropes, which is one of the reasons that I actually like fantasy theory crafting in a broader sense, when you're looking at amalgamations of tropes gathered from many different sources to kind of strike at something deeper within the human psyche. I don't know. Mega says, do you think would be funny? Make a Civ theorycraft contest, but bring fantasy civs to AoE 2. Yeah. Not by bringing in fantasy mechanics or units, but transfer the feeling. Like, how do you make an AoE civ feel like Mordor? Completely agree. I love that idea, and it is in fact on my list of contests I want to do. Ever since I got that fantastic Gondor civilization in a contest back in the day, I've thought about doing that. Hariyama is a really cool fave. Hell yeah, I love that dude. Max says, I want a Dragon Age RTS game like Warcraft 3. See, I wouldn't be surprised if that would be awesome. I just don't know anything about Dragon Age. Like, my cultural... This slice of culture I'm aware of is very thin, you know? Any Civ 7 related video for the launch? I don't know. What do you guys think? Should I do a Civ 7 video? I wouldn't have thought to. Like, maybe I could do something with Yume Crab, the friend who did a Civ 6 video with me. If you guys want to see a Civ 7 video, I'd consider it for sure. I haven't, as I said to him, I have not played Civilization since Civ 3, and while I followed Civ 5 and Civ 6, and they seem cool, yeah, they're just a different way of approaching game design than I tend to think about, because I love complexity. And Civilization games tend to be rather clean and streamlined in their theory crafting. Like, there are exceptions, of course. From what Crab was showing me, there's a couple of ridiculously intricate mechanics that they give, but each faction only has like a couple of unique identifiers, and I love when things are highly, highly differentiated. Strix says people basically got brain chipped during WoW's peak and it was scary. Yeah, I was completely off of that. It was... had several, got too hooked, skipped work, school co-workers. Yeah, oh god. That's exactly why I just swore I would never touch it. I swore I would never touch it. It's just too scary. Gabe says the age 0 idea you're suggesting is interesting. Copper Age and then advancing through the historical ages. Yeah, like, I think it would be awesome if you would have an Age of Empires games or some historical RTS turn-based game or whatever that was split into different eras, and each era was a fully self-contained game, and maybe you only released one era at the beginning. And then, as you add new eras, you also introduce a mechanic wherein someone who, you know, owns both games or whatever the fuck, or DLC, whatever have you, can actually advance from one era to the next era. I think that sounds pretty cool. Like, I think that sounds extremely cool. But I really would miss the depth from a single era if they were all put out at once. I feel like that would be way too much dev time to really dedicate the amount of attention needed to each era to make it feel special, which is my problem with Empire Earth, for example, a game that I'm nostalgic for, but I think is objectively bad. Ola says the MMO I was obsessed with was RuneScape. I played RuneScape for a little while. Frankly, that was part of the reason I never wanted to touch Warcraft, World of Warcraft. Chumbeke says there's so much I could talk about Civilization 7. Well, then we could do something if you wanted. We could do something, get Crab on board. It could be fun. Gabe says a Civ 7 or Humankind, if you're aware of it, could be a good review. Yeah, I've heard of Humankind. again, my issue with the games like that is the civilizations just are so simple comparatively. I love complexity. I love complexity and I love differentiation. So if there was a way I could make those civilizations like 3 to 4 times more different from each other than they are now, that would be like sweet spot. But if nothing else, a video at least talking about Civ 7 sounds like it could be pretty fun. Do a Civ 3 video then? Oh god. Oh yeah, here's my theory craft. It has, you have 2 designators from a preset list of 7 and a unique unit that has to be painfully simple. That'd be like a 2-minute video. Civ 3 was peak. Civ 4 went too paradoxy for my taste. I actually never played 4. I went straight from 3 to like watching a little bit of 5. 3 was really fun. It was really fun. I was so bad at it, but it was really fun. Civ 3 and 4 are the goats. Nice. But Civ 7 will be way different. Yeah, I don't really like the Civ 7 leader system. It doesn't have a thing where like any leader can lead any nation. I get the idea, right? But again, I'm a fan of differentiation. I love games where the factions feel and play completely differently from each other, because then the best for me is you have the factions be super different, but then you have mechanics in the game where you can kit bash them together. That is bliss to me, right? And it's something that I've tried to do in a lot of my own games that I've designed over the years. It was absolutely insane, the Warcraft, World of Warcraft addiction for anyone who witnessed it firsthand. Humans were not prepared. Ben Franklin, Emperor of China. Yeah, it is that. Okay, kind of defeats the point of era-specific civilizations. Yeah, I have a problem with that myself. I like being specific as I can. But I think that what the dang hell was I saying? Yeah, I think that the idea of the more homogenous morphing into each other style of gameplay is cool, and there's a place for it. It's just not for me, you know. Can you open new channel in Discord for beta civilizations where people can post related beta civilization information with citations? Do you mean for Age of Empires, Age of Mythology, or are you talking for like the actual civilization series like Civ 7? Hello there, Ace. How you doing? After finally checking AoE 3 this year, do you ever plan to do any AoE 3 theory crafting? Why, yes, Guayir, I do. I cannot promise it will be soon. I cannot promise it will be common. And I will be needing help. However, it is something I do plan on doing. And that was why I wanted to put out that video kind of showing my introduction to the game first. I think it's cool, though. Mega says, what about to bring up Empire Earth? It's fun to go from cave people to spaceships, but every era is seriously limited. And there are not even different building skins for the Civs. It's still highly nostalgic, and I'm hyped for the Empire's Eternal remake. Never even heard of that. I recently learned that Empire Earth, which I'm very nostalgic for, like I said, got a sequel called Empire Earth 2. I never heard of it, but apparently it's actually good. It's just like very different, which is fine because Empire Earth was bad and very different. I actually loved the Empire Earth map editor. That shit was awesome. Max says every Civ is the best. Nice. Yeah. Gabe says, from what I've seen, there is an element of humankind where you advance in era. So, for instance, Napoleon leading Rome in first era, then Normans in second, then Republican France in the final era. Like, that's a cool idea. I think it's interesting. In theory, I would be more compelled by it if the individual factions and leaders were way more differentiated from each other. Like, I'm going to bring up StarCraft for a moment, even though I think StarCraft has a litany of problems. But the thing that I like most about StarCraft is every faction feels very different from each other, and yet they work together. Another example would be something like, frankly, Smash Bros. In Smash Bros, every character has the same set of buttons, and they have a relatively limited skill set, and yet they play so differently from each other, and there's so much you can do with those couple little buttons. And within any given character, so many ways you can play with them and express their style. It's just bliss. There's so much you can do. If only the game had more like permutation within that, it would just be peak. But this is, admittedly though, I as a Melee player, I never really got into the later games, but I can still admire their massive rosters from afar. Because admittedly, Melee is a little more samey in its designs than the later ones are, and even though I think the movement is way better, I still think that it could do with more differentiation, which is why I played Project Melee, PM. If you know, you know. Shit was the best. T says one channel for refutation with citations. So like a work in progress channel. I guess we have post your builds currently, which is kind of where I'd recommend putting that. And if it ends up being like too clogged up, or it's just not working out for whatever reason, let me know and I can try to make a second. I'm just trying to limit the number of channels in the Discord because I find it way harder to sift through the more that we have. Chumbeke says the main thing against Age 3 theory crafting is you can just like make the civilization for real if you want, Lamau. I actually think that's not even a thing against it. I think that's a pro. I love that. And I like how differentiated they are. I still am sure I'm going to find ways to like push the boundaries, but we'll see. Gabe says, I agree with Gaius. Empire Earth mechanics lack diversity in terms of units and architecture skins. Empire Earth 2 is different but good, yeah. Empire Eternals remake is coming this year, though not saying when it's coming out. Oh, a favor, if you wouldn't mind, let me know when that gets officially announced, because I've had a video planned to talk about Empire Earth forever, because kind of like with Age of Wonders, right? I want to talk about other games kind of contextualized in a way that I can then apply it back to like the main games I talk about on the channel, H2 and Age of Mythology, as well as strategy games more broadly. And Empire Earth actually has one mechanic that I think is amazing. Like, one of my favorite mechanics in any RTS. So I want to do a video about that. But I have so much else to do. So if you wouldn't mind letting me know when Empire's Eternal is announced, I will schedule the video for right before it comes out. Talking about H2 Civ, which are under work. Yeah, use post your builds for now. Crossell says, what about AKP? Alpha Centauri. I've never actually played it before. I think I've heard of it, but not really. Unfortunately. Sorry. Mega says Empire Earth 3 is sadly garbage. I have heard that. Max says, what board games do you enjoy? I played competitive Catan for quite a few years, and while I got very bored of it because it kind of feeling kind of solved to me, it's still really good. I really don't like solved games. I like any game that has kind of endless possibility, right? But Catan was great because my whole family played, and even when I wanted to be like sweaty in tournaments and stuff, I could like deliberately handicap myself playing with family, and it was still fun. Besides that, I have small children, and my oldest, who's 3 now, is starting to kind of understand board games. So I'm reintroducing him to some of the ones from my childhood. A big one being Labyrinth, if you ever heard that. It's really, really cool. You get to like shift columns of tiles to make a maze. He really enjoys it. And I think soon he'll be able to play in a more meaningful way. But besides a lot of these like beloved childhood games, my dad was like a competitive Scrabble player for a while, so I was pretty into Scrabble. Still watch it competitively. Besides that, I would say that I was more into tabletop war games and card games than I was into board games. But all good. And I didn't get into any of them brutally, you know what I mean? Besides competitive Catan. Duke Rando, Civ 7 has the Khmer and the Mississippians as ancient era. I don't know about that. They fit more in with the exploration era than the Normans. Normans are not exploring. I get it. All the while they explored over to the frickin' England. No, thank you. Costaria says, Dearest, what are your thoughts on the Persian architecture in Age of Empires 2? Do you think they will eventually change it? Ideally, we would get more diverse and specific architecture in the game. Yes, I would love that. My opinion is that it is suboptimal. I would love to see, if nothing else, a Iranian architecture set that could represent the Persians and also the many other Iranian civilizations I think belong in the game. Do I think they will change it? Maybe. I think more of the community is becoming vocal about wanting visual customization like architecture sets and unit skins. That I think we might pressure them into doing it. Do I think it will happen soon? Let me think about that. I think we might be able to get a DLC with like 2 or 3 architecture sets, and it'll cost like $15 fucking or something. If it's 5, I'll love it. But if it's 15, I'll be mad. I would love to see a DLC that gave individual architecture sets for all civilizations. Probably not going to happen. If they did it 5 at a time and then, priced them reasonably, I'd be okay with that. Just more customization, the better. And same with unit skins. I think in terms of graphical changes, A regional unit skin DLC thing sounds most likely to me. If I had to guess, this year or next year, if I had to guess. But then more architecture sets. My gut's telling me we might get one within the next year or two, but I think it'll be free as part of a DLC. And a committed architecture DLC, maybe. But I don't think it'll be this or next year. I could be wrong, though. And an individuated architecture set expansion would be frickin' amazing. But yeah, I just don't see that happening. Who knows? Chumbeke says, Age of Empires, the board game theory crafting one. Are you joking or is that a thing? Like, I didn't know Age of Empires Online was a thing until a couple years ago. And so I could totally see Age of Empires, the board game, being a thing. I actually have done, like, my own game design stuff has been more in the vein of board games, card games, and especially tabletop role-playing games. But that's just because I can't code. And so I can't do anything besides those things, right? So I've been kind of forced to do them by necessity, except for tabletop role-playing games, which I think I actually am, like, good at doing. The rest are just, like, goofing around. Tabletop games, I actually think I have some teeth. Gabe says, sure, it's on Steam, but the game is still saying coming soon. Ah, I see, yeah. Strix says, Retold's market performance on Steam has been underwhelming. What is your thoughts? Really? I'm shocked. I would have thought, like, everyone was talking about it. That actually seems... Wow, that actually is really surprising if that's true. I'd want to look into that because that's a problem. Like, a video I have planned at some point is discussing an RTS renaissance. Because I think the RTS genre is wonderful. If you're in the chat, you probably agree. And strategy games are wonderful in general. But they've been very deprioritized from their glory days, of course. And I think a lot of it is due to staleness. And like I mentioned in my Age of Wonders video, using cookie-cutter formulae and not deviating from set assumptions of the player base for strategy games, and especially RTS. We're very rigid in them. And I think that's a serious problem. Age of Mythology Retold, if it is doing poorly, not only is that a tragedy, because it seems to be actually quite good, and like a faithful remake that actually adds value, but also, I feel like that kind of would reinforce my theory of the staleness is the problem, if that's true. But I'd have to analyze it more. That's just my guess. Max says, still love that game. Labyrinth, I'm guessing? Game's sick. For children, Snakes and Ladders. I thought about it, but I have a serious problem with Snakes and Ladders, which is the randomness, right? Like, I think games that have some randomness is fine, but Snakes and Ladders has nothing but randomness. And I want to teach my child to make decisions, damn it. Yeah, and like, so in seriousness, if I could find a way to make Snakes and Ladders like a little more strategic, I'd probably do that. I love like ruining board games or like modifying them to make them my own. Duke Rando says, according to Civ 7, Normans are exploration era. Yeah, that's wrong, but whatever. They probably had like a certain number of categories and a certain number of slots to fill in each category and a certain number of regions they had to fit them in. They're like, oh, fuck it, this works. Just looked, Empire Eternal saying TBA. Yeah. Exploration era in Civ 7 is Middle Ages to early modern period. I just don't know if I agree with that name. Nor do I agree with the time frame. What the heck? There's so much different between... Come on, Civ. You're better than that. It is real. Age of Empires 3 is a board game for real. That actually, I mean, is it good? Anyone whose board game is based on AoE 3, anyone who's played it, let me know if it's actually good. Castaria says, Happy New Year and best of wishes to you and your loved ones, man. Thank you so much, Castaria. Very, very kind of you to say. We've been having a great New Year so far. Happy New Year to you too, and a Happy New Year to everyone watching. I hope you've been having a great time thus far. New Year's been good for me. I've had good productivity, and that's usually the metric for me feeling good. Retold is performing weaker than AoE 4 and AoE 3? Really? That's shocking. That's really surprising. What a bummer. Man. What a bummer. Well, who knows? There could be all manner of reasons. If you guys in chat have any thoughts on why Age of Mythology Retold is performing poorly, please let me know, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to see me do a video on the topic, I'd love to hear from you about that as well. Proc says, I'm working on a fictional Civ for AoE 3. Ah, classic. Of course you are, Proc. That's great. I look forward to hearing more about it. Crosshill says, Retold should be a returning RTS giant. Rather unfortunate it isn't. Yeah, that's what concerns me. Like I've mentioned, my theory is that the RTS genre is a problem for, well, there's a couple of reasons. But I think the reasons it's doing poorly. First of all, is because it's very rigid and isn't trying new things enough. Two, I think it's not ambitious enough, and a lot of the games that are doing different things are rather small in scope. And three, this is like old man yelling at culture thing, right? But I think it's the length. I think that the culture of video games is pushing more and more towards shorter games, and also when games aren't short, and even when they are, is pushing more towards a multiplayer casual experience, which I think is good, by the way. The games that reward chatting with your friends and are kind of multiplayer first, and RTS games have historically not been that. I think there's ways for the genre to very easily accommodate that and be what I call fuck around games. And a fuck around game is a game that you get on with your friends and fuck around it. Examples would be Lethal Company, Helldivers, League of Legends, that sort of Apex, that sort of thing. Can you try hard these games? Yes, absolutely. But the majority of players are just people getting on to fuck around with their friends. Hence, fuck around games. And RTSs typically are not that. So I think one of the things that the RTS genre could do just off the bat would be to maybe push towards more of the fuck around formula, or at least make the games more conducive to that sort of play style, to coax in the multiplayer gaming groups who just, want to kick back and relax and have a good time and maybe enjoy some memes and see some goofy stuff happen. RTS games don't tend to be goofyable in the same way. And when they are, you can do all sorts of goofy stuff in Age of Empires too. But it's one, less satisfying, two, less forwarded, and three, you need to know a little bit more about the game to get to that point, in my experience. But that's just, again, baseline theory. I'll do a bigger video on the topic if you guys want to hear more from it. Gabe says, hoping the Retold DLC ramp up the interest. Perhaps the devs should actually add more campaigns or new mythological battles with real myths. Yes! I hope the DLC revamps it as well, though they will need to reasonably price it. If I had an idea for an RTS, it would be based on clans and daimyos. I think that would be sick. Total War Shogun 2 was pretty awesome. Happy New Year. Thank you to you too. Any RTS you would want revived? This is cheesy, right? I would love to see an actually good port of Warcraft 3. Please. That actually had new DLC that was good and had a great map editor and didn't butcher the graphics and didn't tank performance and didn't suck ass and gouge money. That, please. Although if I had a second one, this is going to be a turbo obscure one. Did you guys ever play the game Dark Colony? Scared the shit out of me when I was like 9 years old, but it was really interesting. Maybe that. Or Warcraft 2. Like a more modernized version of Warcraft 2. Maybe. But Warcraft 3 top of the list for sure. Euronian Civ. Mega says, I have no idea why AOM does worse. The release was much more stable than 3, and AOM was kind of the game every AOE player could agree upon, but as long as AOE 2 exists, every other Age game will do poorly in comparison. Yeah, it's, like I said, the RTS genre keeps going back. It keeps going back to the mean. It keeps regressing to the mean, which seems to be Age of Empires 2. I find it very frustrating as someone who loves the genre and thinks it can be so much more than Age of Empires 2. AOM is doing worse because it hasn't received more campaigns since release, and playing competitive in AOM is not something the average person cares about. That's not a bad point. Maybe by leaning into the more casual crowd, that's the way to do it. They did that like Arena of the Gods thing, which seems really mediocre to me. So maybe that was their attempt to fit with a more modern sensibility, but I don't know. One of my favorite game or cartoon artists is Akira Toriyama. Respectable. Mega says, you play Helldivers. This is the moment we find out that Robbie is a Liberty enjoyer. I have never played it. My buddy Lee does, though, and he has told me, he has regaled me with many a story and meme. A lot of my, modern video game, culture comes from my friends who will just tell me about a game and be like, oh, you should learn, you should, and I'm like, yeah. And then they'll say one thing that gets my attention, and I say, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll steal that idea. Guayur says people play the campaigns and slowly trickled out. Yes, more campaigns based on actual myths, please. Changing X to draw the Y audience can be risky, says Duke Rando. Totally agree. That's why I don't think that... I think the core loop of RTSs should be pushed. It's too stale. I really believe that. But it shouldn't just be trying to only appeal to, the casuals, right? Just allow the game to be played by casuals and competitives alike while still being equally fun and satisfying for both in different ways. H2 competitive is not fun unless you are good. And I will abide by that statement, having grinded many years ago. Sometimes it worked, just sometimes you create weird in between that does not appeal to both. Agree. Max says Warcraft. Yep. Opinion of our beloved Spirit of the Law. Spirit of the Law is a wonderful creator. I think that he does a great job of keeping himself humble and separated from what he's doing on the internet, and I think that's highly commendable. I aspire to be like that, and he's a very polite guy. Mega says Warcraft 3 or Forged if the company actually cared. Yeah, exactly. Warcraft 3 with a full Naga civ. Exactly, that sort of thing would be sick. Command and Conquer I have never actually played, and I know that a lot of people will be like, how could you not have played that? Just because I'm less interested in the modern era than I am historical eras is the main reason for it. Dragon Quest AoE 2 hybrid. Yeah, there's so many things that you can do from like a grounding material perspective. You don't have to just stick to history, even though I love that. And even within history, there's so much more you can do, because I would love to see RTSs play more with what I would call, what's a good word for this? Vivid history. That's going to be my term for it. Where you are trying to stick with historical realism, but you gently exaggerate the coolest parts that are actually real. An example of this, the Mayan ritual boxers. Definitely real. Were they used on a battlefield? No. Almost certainly not. And yet, we should still champion them and still trying to show off the cool things that made a civilization unique that we actually have grounding for. Even if we have to exaggerate a little bit to bring them to a level where they would be able to compete with things that were realistically used. I think that sort of maybe exaggerated history could be a way of saying, but I think vivid history is a better way. You could even explicitly bring in myths and religious elements, like functionally fantasy elements, so long as again they were grounded. And I think if you had the option to turn them off in settings, so that the historical players could get what they wanted and the everyone else could get what they wanted too. Just more pop, more color is what I want to see. I don't like when every civilization is the same gray blob. AI is not going to wait for Blizzard to get its act together. Someone's going to give us Warcraft 3 in 4K eventually. You never know. I just want to see a map editor and a modding community that good again. Age of Empires 2 modding community is amazing. The map editor pales in comparison to Warcraft 3, though admittedly it's easier to use. Tempest Rising seems like a good RTS. I've only heard about it once or twice, and the reviews I've heard seem mixed, but maybe there's potential. And maybe the mixed reviews are coming from people who are stuck in the RTS loop, the stale loop that I've been describing, so to speak. Personally waiting for Dawn of War Revival. They do the old Necrons. Yeah. Akira Toriyama's DBZ and Dragon Quest. Yes, I'm aware. New Necrons are cool, though. Arena of the Gods is fun, but it's kind of more casual play for competitive players because it rewards pulling off clean build orders. Yeah, I don't really know if that's... I really don't know if that's going to appeal to randoms coming into the game. I don't think that's going to be what they want. I want my Catanic Red Harvest. New Necrons are just Eldar. Objectively wrong opinion. Oh no, the 40k wars have begun. Its narrative is thin and irrelevant, and I don't think it's what campaign enjoyers really want to play for Arena of the Gods. Completely agree. Vivid history. Do you mean like the Gatling camels in AoE 3? Pretty good analogy. I think another good comparison could be the Boshi Juen that I put on my Tangut build. They are attested. We don't know much about them, but we have a okay idea of what was being mentioned in the sources, and it's really cool and funky, so we ball. Let's do it. I just don't like when that is over-exaggerated. I think there's a difference, right? Like some Total War games do some really silly stuff. And also, I really don't like when those unique parts are muted, which is, I think, what AoE 2 tends to do, is it makes very interesting, unique things very samey and dull. And you could argue, in history, historical empires are more alike than they are different. I completely agree with that, by the way. There are so many parallels. However, as a lover of history and knowing many lovers of history, I don't think that's what lovers of history want in a historical game, is for things to be so realistic that they lose their individuation, even if it's realistic. I think realism is not everything, even though, I mean, you're looking at me, right? I talk about realism all the time, but I think there's a difference between grounding and realism. Old Necrons are closer to any sort of more Necron discussion. New Necrons are Tomb Kings in space. That's actually generally my issue with Warhammer 40,000. I never got into it. Again, I don't really love sci-fi as much as I love historic fantasy, but I will admit 40K's world building is a million times better than Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Warhammer Fantasy Battles world building is like laughably bad, but it's pretty and the miniatures are fun. So it would be a shame if Warhammer 40K became more like Fantasy Battles, both because I think they deserve to be different and also because I think it has better world building. How much the Danes going to be differentiated from the Swedes in AoE 2? Having studied them a bit, more than you'd think. I think a good example can just be like immediately seen in their proximity to crusadable peoples, shall we say. That by itself changes the culture on its face. Also, their deposits of mineral wealth. The Danes had a much more farming-rich environment, and the Swedes are very mountainous and had tons and tons of mineral wealth. Another example would be the Danes' proximity to Germany, which not only Germanized them, but also meant that they had to fight constant frickin' border wars. So just looking at the observable historical details, there's a lot of clear ways the two are different, despite their similarities. And by looking to how that leads to individual differences, we can then gently exaggerate those differences to make them pop against each other. Danes will be more naval focused, probably have better light infantry options, but worse cavalry. I'm not sure I'd actually agree with that assessment. I'd have to review the sources. Both very naval, of course, both infantry, both cavalry. I think the Danes would probably, if I had to summarize, Danes would have a more coherent religious focus because they were Christianized much earlier. The Danes would have much bigger armies. They would probably have overall better equipped armies, but the Swedes would not only have speed on their side, probably with not better light troops, but better like ranger style troops. But I guess the Swedes would probably have, if not better cavalry, they'd have more heavy cavalry. Just off the gas. Hi, Robbie. Hey, Matroid. How you doing, my friend? They're a European civ. I don't think they'll be crazy. I'd like them to be crazy. I think crazy within grounding is good. Could give the Danes the Espingal if they want crazy stuff. Never heard of that before. There's a chance they'll give a nod to the Vikings for the Danes in AoE 3. I really hope they won't. Kalmar Union, yes, but please no Vikings. 15th century Denmark has absolutely nothing to do with Vikings. Yeah, correct. Danes also had a bigger overseas colonial empire in Africa, India, Caribbean. Yes, that's also true. Danes in AoE 3 might get Inuit mercenaries or something like that. Wild. This is about Danes in AoE 3, not AoE 2? Really? Oh no. Original question was from Prox about Danes differentiated from Swedes in AoE 2. Oh, and then he said AoE 3. I'm dumb. Well, whatever. My things about AoE 2 still stand. Pardon me. Swedes in AoE 3. Denmark still owns Greenland. Yeah, nice. Strix says, I chose Retold over AoE 4 because my graphics card and it panned out. Retold gives high performance with lower end graphics cards. I think that's actually a good point. It's a very well optimized game. And frankly, I think it's like a much better product on release than any Age game in memory, except for AoE 2 DE, which maybe I'm rose tinting, but I remember being very good on release. I could be rose tinting. If so, I apologize. Yeah, Retold I think is a beautiful looking game. I think it had a couple of like performance issues, but those were patched very, very quickly. And frankly, I think it has another big appeal in that I think Age of Empires 4, opinion me, right? Objective opinion, though, is it's not a game I enjoy. And it's a game that there are some things about it I like, some things I love, some things I respect, but a lot I really disagree with on a profound level. And the big one being that I think it's it really over-indexes into the competitive scene, and it rug pulled us with promises of historicity. That pissed me off so much. But there's a lot of it that I really do like. So I think Retold, probably a better choice overall if I had to pick in a vacuum. Retold also looks better than AoE 4, agree. What countries did Sweden and Danes own back then? No idea. S-Bengal is very early rapid-firing weapon used by the Danish. That's interesting. Never heard of that. Definitely more for AoE 3, I'd imagine. Crosshill says, a friend is waiting for me to get a better PC to play AOM Retold, and he's more of an AOM fan. Do it! I mean, getting a better PC, definitely, you need to take your time to do that. But seems like a good game. I think it's really a criminal shame that it's not doing well. We're playing AoE 2 because I haven't. Yeah. Sweden had colonies in Pennsylvania, and Denmark had St. Martin in the Caribbean. Yeah, that sounds right. Mega says Sweden, on its largest extent, reigned over Finland, the Baltics, northern Poland, had some small overseas colony in Africa and Northern America. Interesting. Yeah, and then Denmark owned Norway and Iceland, I want to say, and Greenland and some other stuff. There's attempted union between Sweden and Poland. Yeah, I remember learning about that. That was really interesting. But that's a little past my preferred time frame. Do you guys have any other questions for me? Any other stuff you want to discuss? Any other stuff you want to hear from me about? Hot takes, all the like. I think one question I would have for you, if you're interested in sharing with me, is when would you like to do another contest? We, of course, have the contest reward video that is going to be published within the next, I'm going to say, 1 to 2 months. Hopefully by then. Yeah, it should be by then. And then from that point, we can start to think about doing another contest. And if so, when would you like to do it? Do you want to wait till spring, summer, winter, do it once a year? What? And what would you like the themes to be? And did you enjoy having both Age of Mythology and Age of Empires divisions in the contest? We'll take a couple more questions unless a whole bunch of, like a whole flood come in. More discussion of Danish history. Lovely. AoE 2 is too popular for even Retold, says Matt. I remember many good players tried it for a while before sticking back to AoE 2. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I was thinking about this the other day. A lot of legendary games are the second in a series. Just off the top of my head. I mean, I'm sure you guys will think of many besides. Just off the top of my head. Age of Empires 2, Team Fortress 2, Half-Life 2, Super Smash Bros. Melee, which is Super Smash Bros. 2. A lot of these legendary games come as the second. And they just pull people back in. I'm thinking about, like, long-form multiplayer stuff. So Half-Life isn't a great example. But, like, TF2, I think, is a perfect example of this. Doesn't matter what other games come out that are similar. People just keep coming back to it. And I don't... That's part of the reason I think RTS games should try to be more different from Age of Empires 2. Because we already have Age of Empires 2. We don't need more Age of Empires 2. How do you give name or tag to area community who manage to create huge empires, then get fragmented? Many war chiefs start ruling, and another powerful power defeat them, not able to replace them. After a few times, they manage to reassert their power, come semi-independent. Yeah, it's... Naming civilizations in general is very, very complicated. The best way I have found to do it is to get a list of like 5 or 6 names that are plausible, shave them down based on which ones feel most appropriate, and then if there's a tie, go with which one sounds better. It's as simple as that. So, as an example, let me think of an example that won't spoil anything. Oh, an example here. The Chontals. I did a video with Amiki's help on the Chontali Maya a little while back. And trying to find names for specific Maya peoples can be quite challenging. Yes, the Chontals are a Maya ethnic group, but how exactly do you find them? Do you include everything in just the Tabasco area that has ever been Maya? The answer to that is no, by the way, but a lot of it is just like the Tabasco Mayans. So you have to kind of do a combination of region, time frame, interpolation with other powers and peoples, and how much of a unique identity they retained across a period of time. I think that the unique identity thing is huge, especially because if a people become conquered and they retain their old culture, that means that's very different from if they get conquered and they adopt the culture of their conquerors. How about a fictional Civ contest? I could consider it. Objective Civ theme. Will you do an Olmec build? I'm not sure. Olmecs are a very messy topic now that I have learned more about Mesoamerica from Amiki. If I did, it would have to be for AoE 1, because they're obviously outside of the AoE 2 window. It's kind of like how the term Toltec is not what it is often attributed to be in historical discussion. Toltecs were not like a thing, really. They were, it's like a loose umbrella describing a shit ton of independent city-states. And Olmecs might be kind of in a similar boat, though I think they're more cohesive than Toltecs. I'd have to review the sources, might not be enough material, but suffice to say that if I start doing AoE 1 era stuff, which I would love to at some point, they'd be on the list for sure. Tier list, of course, for Civ theme. I did actually do a Civ theme video way back in the day, the jingle theme. Or not full themes, but just jingles. I still abide by most of those. I did enjoy seeing the split contest in AoE 2 and AOM. Good. I'll try to do that for it. What's your style on further Chronicles style DLCs? I think that they are worse than base game DLCs, though it was cool to see. And if they do more, I would love to see them be actually medieval. If they give us more assets, if they introduce things that matter to the broader game, like introducing architectures or unique like regional unit skins or something, that will make them worth the value. Even beyond their one big isolated campaign. As I predicted in my initial video, and my initial discussion about the Chronicles thing, I was very dubious of the amount of value that could be afforded for the price tag, and I still hold by that opinion to this day. And I do intend on doing a follow-up video to Chronicles down the line, because a lot of you have reported feeling similar. Mega says, I like AoE 2, but I get bored too fast because the civs feel similar. It's like choosing my favorite architecture for my scout rush, so I stick to AoE 3. Exactly! Like, AoE 2 has amazing movement, it's snappy, it's responsive, it's quick, it's very skill expressive, but it's samey, in my opinion, and I think many's. And again, that's why I would say it's kind of similar to Smash Bros. Melee in that regard. Did I hear your Galicians jingle? I have not yet. You should post it in Discord. If you already have, please relink it. Legendary games are why I think companies like Blizzard and Creative Assembly are afraid of AI. People are going to try to make definitive editions themselves. Could be that, but modding communities have been around much longer than that and have done really amazing things that have uplifted these games to an enormous degree. I think any RTS game, frankly any game, but especially any RTS game that doesn't put serious hours into making their map editor as good as it possibly can be are fools. Because especially RTS and strategy games live and die by their map editors. I will say it, I've said it before, I will say it again. That is the way to make a game enduring and successful for more than 2 to 5 years. My guess that they continue Chronicles, they'll touch on Alexander the Great and the Wars of the Diadochi and the Epigonoi. I've never heard that word before. I hope they don't, frankly. I'd like to see it go back to medieval stuff, because AoE 2 is about medieval stuff. And I don't feel like the older ones add enough value to the base game and its base players. Neither Blizzard or Paradox are afraid of AI. They want to use it. I fully agree with that, by the way. And I want to make sure, again, for me, above all else, prioritize modding. Potential civs in the next Chronicles, Macedonians or Macedonian, Thebans, Morians, Ptolemies, Seleucids. Yeah, like, if they went that direction, that's definitely what you would do. I think it would be a mistake, personally. I think we should keep Age 2 focused on the medieval era, and if they want to do earlier stuff, then they should unfuck the Return of Rome DLC and actually make that good. And then you can add Chronicles to that to add more value to that section of the game, rather than just kind of just chucking stuff at AoE 2 and hoping something sticks. Since it means they don't got to pay people, which is any company's dream. Might get to that. It is any company's dream, though. You're right about that. Next Chronicles should be about 3 Kingdoms. Chronicles back to AoE 1 makes no sense. Okay, I think 3 Kingdoms was a great idea because it would slowly let them inch back into the proper medieval era, and because 3 Kingdoms China is amazing and underrated. I mean, it's underrated in the West, right? It's not underrated in China. But yeah, I think that would be a great idea. For the contest, someone actually proposed a Chronicles for the 3 Kingdoms, which I thought was pretty compelling. I actually like them being ancient more since AoE 4 is medieval for no reason. I'm starved for antiquity. Agree, but that's AoE 4's fault. I'm just worried about value to the base game. Like I said, if you make a Chronicles that introduces a new architecture set, if it's an ancient Chronicles, then that architecture set is useless for the base game. Whereas if you make it for a medieval themed one and you introduce some like cool cosmetics, then even someone who doesn't really care about the campaigns can pick it up for the awesome cosmetics that are applicable to the civilizations they play in multiplayer and similar. Honestly thought, Robbie, how about a design contest about a Chronicle style Civ in the ancient era? Could do it. I could see it. Again, I'm kind of reluctant because there's so much more to explore in the medieval era, and there's so much beautiful detail that is lost when we focus on the medieval era as 400 to 1600 AD and the way AoE 2 does. I just wish we had more, we had a good Age of Empires Antiquity game. That's really what Age of Empires 4 should have been. Go back to Antiquity, preferably like a nice tight window in the late classical era, and keep the same differentiation, keep all that, but just give us Antiquity in the way that it should be. Not as like the leftovers of AoE 2 DLCs. I don't love that. I think this might be why some new games are harder to mod. I think some might worry about mods competing with DLC. I actually agree with this, but I think they are dumb to worry about that. Rather than that, they should look for ways to sustainably monetize DLC. I think if they found a way to allow like established DLC creators to charge for DLC with easy chargebacks if it's garbage or broken, and they take a very small cut of it, bingo bango. There's a lot of modders out there who are like patronized for their work on like platforms like Patreon, and for a very high quality mod by a modder with a track record that has a zero hassle cash refund if the mod is junk or something like that, I think that would be a win-win for everyone. Company doesn't have to worry. They don't have to put towards a shit ton of dev time. Prices can stay nice and low, and people can feed back into their own community with only a small amount being sloughed off by the company itself to keep the servers up and basic like patch support going. To me, that sounds like the platonic ideal for a long-form RTS game sustainability. What do you guys think? Chronicles went to AoE one time period because the dev team won it. Pretty much. I think that's silly. I don't think it's a good idea. Mod is in the Greco-Roman world. I expect Macedonians, Thracians, Egyptians. You're probably right. Yeah, just I wish they would, instead of kind of scatterbrainedly going wherever they feel like they want to, it would be, I think, much better if they just fixed Return of Rome and then put good stuff into that instead. Return of Rome had so much potential, and I think it was wasted. Epigonoi is the successors of Diadochi. Oh, cool. I didn't know the word for it. I have not listened to the theme yet. I will do so after the stream. Seleucids would be OP. That's funny. Chronicles ideas are sick, but why isn't a new game? I agree. How awesome would it be if they just, again, unfucked Rome, Return of Rome? They made that a more AoE 2 port-like thing rather than like a patchy remake of AoE 1 that no one wanted for the second time, and then put like full-length campaigns and sick stuff into that. That would be amazing. I just don't like the way that they've proceeded with it. If they did it that way, I would have zero problem with Chronicles doing ancient stuff, because it would give long-form value to people who love antiquity and can actually apply it to a robust, larger-scale Return of Rome that actually had the content background to sustain people's interest and sustain people's value. If AoE 4 had gone back to Antiquity, it would be sick. Yeah. Let's see. According to primary source, Ashoka proclaimed himself as king of Magadha. Oh, excuse me for the bump. Kingdom. Okay, pardon me. I don't follow the thread of that, but I know a bit about King Ashoka, or Emperor Ashoka rather. It's something I'd like to dive into more, because Indian history is tough and there's so many threads to it. God, having recently been trying to parse apart Indian history, it's a trip. If any of you feel like, I want to learn more about a part of the world that I haven't learned about before, and you don't know a lot about Indian history, go there. It's as or more intricate than Europe, and very vivid and colorful and exciting. Definitely look about that. Was excited for Return of Rome, then nothing happened. Something that intrigues me is that theoretically dataset mods only allow as many civs as AoE 2 with all the DLC civs, which means you can make a mod for Return of Rome with like 20 or more civilizations. Yeah, you could. probably wouldn't even be that hard, to be perfectly... well, I mean, it would be hard, right? I'm not to trivialize the work of modders. You guys do great stuff, but compared to some of the other shit people have done, it wouldn't be that hard. And we have a lot of the assets for it, too. Let's make something good. I just wish it were properly supported and would get further support with things like Chronicles or similar. I want ship combat, Antiquity or Napoleonic or otherwise. There's actually a tabletop war game, I guess you could call it, that's called Sails of Glory, which actually simulates tall ship era combat better than almost any other game I've played. It's awesome. It's so fun. Highly recommend. Who remembers Bardcore? Yeah, of course I remember that stuff. That was awesome. If it's done well with authentic instruments, exactly. Everyone loved Medieval Folk and the covers too. Yeah, like there's similar to how I'm kind of whinging about I'm whinging about the limitations of the RTS genre. All culture has major arbitrary limitations that, when they can be effectively bypassed, just allows this absolute flood of beautiful color and excitement and interest. So video game development is no different. Music is the same. It's just our job as people who love it, if we want to see more of it, to see how we can forward it as best as we can and in a sustainable way. I don't get why AoE2 modding is a civ limit amount. It's very arbitrary. Yeah, completely. This is silly. And it's abundantly fixable. Before they just release a DLC that raises the civ limit and does nothing else. I actually think that they have found the civ limit to be a very productive part of DLC pricing. I'm not going to say it's a huge part of DLC pricing, but as soon as they open the civ limit, that's yet another reason to not buy a DLC and might drop sales figures by 5%, which might not sound like much, but could be a difference maker. You never know. Rome at War. There was Rome at War mod in AoE 2, and it's the one that made Chronicles modders hired as game devs. Yeah, that I will say, one of the things I do like a lot about Age games is they tend to hire their best modders quite often, which is good. You should hire modders. Modders are very good at their job. I loved War Elephant when I was young. The more I learned about it, the more I realized it's a serious topic. Yeah, it's fucked. It is what it is. But so is war in general, and that's just one of the many awful things about it. All right, final questions. We'll sign off in the next 5 minutes or so, unless you guys have anything burning that you'd like to discuss with me. If so, I'm of course happy to do so. Thank you so much for all the great questions and back and forth in conversation. It's always really fun talking to you guys. Let me see. Is there any other things I want to specifically ask you? I guess we've already talked about potential contest stuff. Maybe do a fictional thing. Maybe do an antiquity thing. All sorts of cool stuff there. Blah, blah, let me think. Talked about Empire Earth making a thing before the remake comes out. Do you guys want a video about RTS genre and the potential failure of Age of Mythology Retold? Is that something you'd like to hear more long form about? It would be a whinging video. I'll promise I'll try to keep it on the lighter side for being a whinging video, but I think it could be important and useful. Would you make a DLC rely on Battle of Greece tech tree? I would not. I don't agree with how they've done it. I think it's fine, you know, Rome at War team is good, right? But I think I would, if I was going to do something like that, I would want to remake the tech tree completely first. Which is, you know, only that, right? But I don't think it would be that difficult, hopefully. Talking about Wallenstein music. Theban's Civ concept when I get around to Antiquity, for sure. What Eminem did. Oh, yeah. Fleeting or flighting. Yeah, that's something that you see in especially old Gaelic and Brythonic sources. And it exists even older than that as well. And similar things exist in other parts of the world, but the British Isles were particularly known for what we might call weaponized ritual satire, shall we say. You can do it in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Nice. How did Age of Mythology Retold fail? We were talking a little bit earlier about how the numbers on it are just way worse than a lot of us expected. It's doing worse even than Age of Empires 3, which is just a huge shame. Would be interested to hear your detailed opinion about it. Awesome. Yeah, I will note that down. AOM RTSs. Okay. Write everything in a notebook, guys. It helps a lot. And then you can transcribe it to a computer thing later. Look at all that. You can't see it because of the light. Whoa! Endless notes, video notes, and things like that. Helps me a lot at the very least. Thought it was successful. It was, but now it has less players than AoE 3. Yeah, it had a pretty severe drop-off. I'd be curious to talk about why it's losing interest as well. I think casual market is definitely a big part of it. Not adding new campaigns, and again, the thing that I will continue to beat the drum of, not innovating. People finished playing the campaign and left. Exactly. What is your opinion about medieval rock? Should they have more of the Latin and Gregorian chants? I don't have a strong opinion about it, to be perfectly honest. I'll sometimes listen to a bardcore thing when it passes across my my transom, but for the most part, my musical tastes are rather arbitrary and are mostly governed by like friends being like, Rob, look at this song. And once in a while, I'll be like, wow, that's awesome. So I don't have particular styles I'm married to. I'd say the closest I've ever gotten to like committedly listening to medieval rock, and this is a big stretch, would be the band Jethro Tull, which I was extremely into. And I can do an uncannily good impersonation of the lead singer's voice. Not going to demo that right now because I don't want to blow your eardrums out. Maybe another time. Okay, then not transitioning to multiplayer. Music in general should have more Latin. Oh, wow. No bias there from you, Megas. Yeah, not transitioning to multiplayer. I feel like, in general, RTS games really overestimate the amount that normal video game players are interested in 1v1 multiplayer in RTS games. I don't think it's that many. I think most people who play competitive multiplayer want to do it with their friends. And even then, they don't necessarily want to be super competitive. And Age of Empires 2 is just not very good for that, to be honest. There's an Italian parodistic medieval rock group. Did you know the context is hilarious? They also constantly make AoE references. That's really cool. Nicely done. Especially when the pronunciation is done right on the Latin front. Yes, I agree. I have a cousin who is a classicist in both old ancient Greek and Latin. And I will, once in a while, for my old Roman build way the hell back in the day, I actually like tried to run it by him early on, but no, he wasn't able to get back to me. I published a video, sent it to him. How did I do? He's like, you messed up one conjugation, or one declension, but otherwise you're fine. Latin rock would be amazing. Nice. Majority of players are single player in any game. I think that is largely true with some exceptions. In RTS games, that's true, but in a lot of the games that you see being popular out in the world these days, the main focus is multiplayer. Not always, but often. Again, see big trendsetters that I was mentioning earlier on. That isn't to say that you should focus on casual multiplayer, but you should not disbar it, and nor should you make it difficult to access. I think it should be rewarded and it should be prominent. Again, think of games like, as mentioned earlier, League of Legends. Whole point is pretty much casual multiplayer. Get around, fuck around with your friends. Yeah, people try hard it, but I think more people play it casually. Maybe not these days, but definitely for most of its lifespan, that's been the case. But for RTS, single player needs to be a huge priority as well. Campaigns are massive. Good skirmish maps are massive. So I guess for RTS, if I had to prioritize, wow, this is miserable. It would be something like official single player stuff is the most important thing you can do. Modding support and good mods, good mod workshop, good mod community, great modding tools in game, maybe mod monetization is second most important. Then casual multiplayer, then ladder multiplayer, then esports. And that's the last, but it's not unimportant, right? I just don't like how esports has become rank 1 or 2 for so many games. That's what AoE 4 did. It was made esports. There you go. Most players are not interested in that. Not just that, AoE 4 is also a game with 0 skill ceiling, unlike AoE 2. I think people would disagree with that. AoE 4 does seem like it has some skill ceiling. It's too streamlined. And I think that's a problem. It's not a very textured competitive landscape. Even though the civs are so different, which I love, The games often feel the same, to me at least. Do you think of Miracle Aligner? Never heard of them before. Another one I've never heard, Faraji, never heard of that either. This is why so many people gravitate towards AoE 2 and not AoE 4, or Melee instead of other Smash games. Yeah, I think the skill ceiling is absolutely essential if you're going for a esportsy competitive game. I think you can have both. You can absolutely have a game that focuses on single player and casual multiplayer and mods while still having a great skill ceiling and great esports scene. But the esports scene has to come last, and it has to come naturally from the rest of the interest in the game, rather than, in my opinion, being kind of artificially propped up, which is what I see happening in a lot of cases. There's a Latin version of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. That sounds awesome, actually. Last cue from Gabe. Aside from RTS, are there any other games you like? Hack and slash, city builder. That's a good question. In terms of general genres, this is going to sound kind of weird. The game type I like most after strategy games, especially turn-based and RTS, is actually hard as balls platformers and adjacent. Games like Celeste and Cuphead that make you want to break your keyboard in half. Hollow Knight is another good example. I love games like that. Hollow Knight actually is a strong contender for my favorite game of all time that isn't a strategy game. I think it actually is. And it would probably be a top 5, maybe even a top 3 game of all time for me. Because I like difficulty, and I like trigger reflexes, and I like movement options. It's part of the reason I like Melee so much, is it's a platformer fighting game. And I find satisfying movement and unlocking a game's physics engine to be just insanely fun. Hollow Knight, obviously, it's a game you don't have to be a platformer lover to enjoy, but after I like 110% of the game or whatever, I only play Steel Soul now, which is the hardcore mode, where you die, your save file is deleted. I love that shit. Anything that's insanely hard and but is like skill-based, insanely hard, and makes me invested on any given run, I love that. And for strategy games, by the way, I know it's a huge genre, but like, just because a game is a strategy game doesn't mean I will like it. There's many strategy games I didn't like. Many that I felt like I would, like another video I want to do someday. The Banner Saga is one of the most disappointing games of all time for me. Aesthetic A+, story amazing, characterization quite good. The core idea of the combat mechanics is also good, but there was one frickin' mechanic that ruined that goddamn game for me. Maybe I'll tell you guys about it someday. But yeah, great question. There's a lot of different game genres that I really, really love. It would be easier to name the ones I don't like anything in than the ones I do. Like rhythm games. Suck at rhythm games. Not a fan. Even if you don't want to go for esports, you need a game highly accessible and welcoming with tons of depth and optimization to keep people in. Yes, I would agree with that. AoE 2 does this to a T, to a degree, I would say. And I think, again, it's done it very well in so many ways, but I think there are other ways to do it besides that. And that's what the industry has fallen for, is the trap of AoE 2 or nothing, right? Talking about Linkin Park. Yep. Matchboard says for me it's Dark Souls. But for me, rather than difficulty, my main attraction in a game that really sucks you in and immerses you with its mechanics and decisions. Yeah, immersion is important for me, but yeah, if you just give me like a polygon with great movement options, I won't care very much. Dark Souls I don't like, but mostly because I find it boring, like very slow, and I hate long respawn timers. A game that makes you walk all the way the fuck back like 2 hours to where you last left off is not the game for me. I like fast, right? Like my main Celeste save file has like 13,000 deaths on it. And if the respawn timer was even a second longer, that's like a day of my life wasted. JTH Fear, hi from the UK, love the channel. Many thanks for the feedback, for your silly ideas. Of course. Thank you so much for being here. Silly ideas is our specialty. And then more music talk. All right, I think it's time for us to sign off. Thank you all for the questions and for joining me on this first stream of the year. Congratulations again to Diego and to Megas for winning the contest. You both will be hearing from me soon. And Thanks again to everyone who submitted to the contest and everyone who is participating now in the stream. It's been awesome going back and forth with you, reading chat, that sort of thing. If you want me to do more streams, let me know. Comment section, Discord, whatever the heck. It's not something I'm like naturally inclined to do, but if it's something you want to see more, we can do it. It's pretty easy for me to do. How do you choose monastery technologies? Oh god, that's such a messy topic. Monastery technologies are an absolute disaster. Maybe I'll talk about that in a video someday. I mean, I already have kind of in my monastery remake, but for now, doesn't matter because they're garbage. Do whatever you want. Maybe lock in more because you appreciate the world. Yeah, that's totally true. It's a pleasure and congrats to those who won the contest. Well said, Gabe. Thank you all so much for taking the time today. But until we meet again, my name is Robbie Howell. Have a wonderful 2025 and be ready for many, many new videos to come on the channel. And ciao for now.